So I'm here today with the author of Paperless Builders, the very famous Hamzah, who I really like Hamzah because I met you and you immediately sent me a signed copy and I was like, wow, this is so nice. And it's an amazing book if you haven't read it. So you've written an article for me, you're Alice's favorite person. I don't know if I can say that publicly.
Yes,
but
you can!
you're Alice's favorite person. And the way I wanted to frame today's conversation is you have a background in innovation, a background in solution and adoption, and I really strongly believe, yes, we need more solutions in the industry, but one of the hardest challenges and pain points is adoption and scaling. Yes, I can get one person to use it, but how do I get 10, 50, 100 people across an organization and think about that culture change process, which in your book, which I'm showing on the screen right now again, you go into that and you go into your framework. But before we go into that, I want to take a step back, which is where you started your book, which is the why. Why do we need technology? How do you really think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And this was like impromptu on the spot, but I love it. One of the things, so the why is like there's two different parts of it. Like the first part is like, why did I even write the book?
Yeah.
Right, and that's a big portion of it. And I always go back to for the betterment of. So it started with for the betterment of Hamzah.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting there like doing VDC work, grunt work, trying to finish things, and I'm sitting there at the desk at like till 9, 10 p.m. trying to finish something because people in the field are going to wait for me the next. They're not going to come in the morning and I'm still going to work on it. They needed it the first thing in the morning. So I started looking for technologies to help me, selfishly, right? Yeah. I wanted to be better. I wanted to get out of the door by 5 p.m. and just be with my family. So I started looking at technologies, and that, of course, kind of started for the betterment of VDC. Now, because there's other teammates that are also working, they need to be, done quickly. Mm-hmm. So for the betterment of VDC. And after that, Haskell started DisruptTech, our kind of like venture arm that's also looking at innovation. And I, of course, was jumping up and down, putting my hand up, trying to get selected for that. And it became for the betterment of Haskell. So now I'm not just looking at technologies that enable the VDC team and what they do, but the whole company in general. Mm. And that was kind of like the progression after that, is like going to so many different conferences and sharing some of these experiences. I'm like, why don't I go and be for the betterment of the industry? So that's kind of the impetus of the book, is like I just really trying to share all the knowledge that I've gained throughout the implementations, failed and successful implementations of so many different solutions.
And I guess in that progression, at some point you go, I have something interesting to say, I have something to share. And why do you think that this book needed to be written?
Yeah, that's the more I talk to people, the more I realize, I've been through that struggle, right? Especially when you're talking about, I mentioned that also in the book, which is like, it's really, my target audience is mid to small size construction companies. So talk GCs, trade partners, all of that stuff. Because they don't have an innovation person like me. They don't have an innovation team. They probably don't even have a VDC team.
Yeah.
They have one person that does IT and everything else, and that's their tech team, right? So that was the idea, is like, how do I reach those people? Because helping them helps us too, as the GC. Yeah. And that's something that we've struggled with, like working with trade partners in remote areas that are not tech savvy, right? Yeah. So it kind of like hinders the project a little bit. So how do we bring them up to the state of technologies and using the different tools that can enhance all of our work?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point that you make, which is at that enterprise level, you have the margins to create DisruptTech or some other kind of solution and the way to adopt. But most of the industry is small to mid-sized GCs, under $1 billion, even under $500 million. 100%. They're doing a lot of the work. They don't have the ability to adopt solutions. And even adopting a small solution will create really large-scale productivity improvements across the industry. And I really like that you've gone, hey, like the way to do that and the way to deliver that is by sharing your voice.
Yes.
And I think that's a good segue into, how do we do that? So there's that element of, I think, a conversation about the what and the solutions that are out there, but then after that we can move into your framework and
But I
how
didn't get to the second part of the why.
Oh, true, yeah.
Because again, I always believe that understanding the problem is half the solution in itself.
Yeah.
So that's why I started the book with the section of why. What are the problem statements in the industry that need solving. And one of the things that I mentioned there is like, so there's 4 different chapters, talking about safety is a big important aspect. Communication in general is a big component that can use a lot of enhancements. And then we have a progress tracking, and how do we capture that? And then the last one is risk management. And the way that I frame it is, if you don't acknowledge that you have a problem, then there is no point in continuing with the book. There is no point in looking at technology and solutions if you don't believe that there's a fundamental problem in the way that we're doing things right now. Then there's no point in trying to solve it.
If you don't believe that we can be better, or you think this is the way always things have been done, so there is that culture change component of being like, hey, I'm curious, I know there's something
100%.
else.
And every section in the chapter, or every chapter has different sections, and each section starts with kind of like a story. Of here's what I dealt with firsthand. Most of these stories are firsthand stories of the problems that are actually happening in the field. That a lot of times, like, nobody wants to acknowledge them, nobody wants to bring them to surface, because nobody wants to say we suck at a thing. Right. So everybody says like, no, we're doing great. Look at our bottom line. Right.
No, that's a really interesting point, and I think that now segues us to the what of. There's more solutions off the shelf, which I think goes back to your SMB point of they're probably not at the cutting edge of trying new solutions and early stage startups, but some of the more mature solutions like reality capture and a few others that you mentioned, it's a really great opportunity for them to start on this innovation journey.
100%, and that's the biggest part of the what section is. You don't like. I'm trying to reach out to the reader. Again, my audience is focusing on small to mid-sized construction companies, saying, "Hey, you've acknowledged that you have a problem or opportunities for improvement is the way that I like to package it. Opportunities for improvement. Now, I don't want you to think like, oh, now I need to hire developers. Now I need to figure out how to build something that makes it better. It's like, no, all of these solutions already exist. There's tons and tons of technology solutions from startups, from established companies, from IPO companies that can solve a lot of these different problems. You just need to change that mindset and start experimenting and seeing what works and what doesn't, and how to get it to that scaling.
And I think that's a good point on, there's established routes for technology and adoption on certain categories that I think are oversaturated, right? Like project management software. Is a great example of, hey, like you can just use this off the shelf, and these companies and providers can actually give you the implementation and rollout plan so that it is a lot easier for you to adopt. And maybe you could just briefly mention if there are categories that you look at and go, if I'm an SMB, this is where I would start and where I know I can get really good gains very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, like project management platforms, that's your foundation layer. Because everything else, all the different point solutions, going to have to sync back to your ultimate source of truth for your system of record, whatever that is. So that's going to be the first thing that you want to look at. And you want to try different things, you want to talk to different people. You're not just going to grab the first one and implement it and see how it works, right? So that project management is literally the first thing, like ERP system and all that goes with it.
No, that's really good. And I think now we can probably shift a little bit into the how, which I think is very, very challenging, as we mentioned before. And you have a framework of how you've done it, how you've adopted it, and what you've learned from your experiences in innovation. So, I mean, I guess just walking through that framework and we can start to dive a bit deeper into some sections.
So, again, me talking to the reader, I'm like, I threw at you so many opportunities for improvement. I threw at you so many different technologies that are existing out there that you can just grab and implement. How are you going to start? Where are you going to start, right? Because, as I think Picasso said it, is like, give me a blank canvas and I don't know where to start. I have to put a dot somewhere to know where to start, right? So that's what the third section is about, right? The third section is talking about how. How do you implement it? And the way that I also, kind of try to pitch it is with the Builders framework. I try to make it easy to remember, right? People love acronyms and those things. So Builders, it goes into the first thing is like you start with the B, which is benchmark. You want to understand what your processes are, what existing solutions you have, what's your tech stack currently, Where are your bottlenecks in the company? Where are the biggest opportunities for improvement? You want to highlight those. You want to find those opportunities for improvement before you start implementing anything.
Yeah.
Because again, like I've been guilty of this. I mentioned this like at least 7 times in the book. Is like I've chased the shiny object so many times, and I'm like, that technology looks cool.
Yeah.
Try to like just shove it down somebody's throat. It doesn't work out, right?
Yeah.
If you're not finding the right problem statement, you're not.
So you want to be kind of pulled by the business rather than pushing.
Exactly. Yeah. So benchmarking, understanding your processes, understanding your tech stack, where you stand, what are the biggest bottlenecks that you want to solve for. That's step 1.
Yeah.
And then you go to the U, which is users, the people. Arguably, the people are more important because you're not going to do the benchmarking exercise in a vacuum either way, right? So you're going to have to be talking to people, but getting their buy-in, getting their, showing them the vision of why are we even trying to look at this? And I always go back to the Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, one of my favorite books. He talks about like creating a good culture with any company. Depends on 3 things. One is sharing vulnerabilities. So when you're talking to people, you're asking them for help. You're not just dictating, it's like, show me your problem statements, stuff like that. No, you're asking them for help. You're like, I need to help you. Help me help you kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then talking about sharing the vision. It's like, why are we trying to do this? Because if they don't see that vision, that they're not going to try to strive for that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The third one escapes me.
But I think, like, just taking a step there then, how do you do that, right? Like, the medium of communication can be very challenging. Is it in-person workshops? Is it, customer interviews with your end user? How do you start to get that buy-in, right? Like, you're trying to get buy-in from that end
You're trying to get buy-in. That's really it. And how you get that is by showing them the future, showing them the vision.
Yeah.
It's like, here's where we want to go.
Yeah.
Why do we want to do that, right? Going back to start with why, going back to understanding what are we trying to solve for, right? And make it about them, not about the company, not about the project. That's always a little whiffum, right? It's like, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
It's extremely important every time you're talking to somebody. Don't focus on the project. Don't focus about bottom line, company, whatever it is, reputation. That's all going to come if you focus on the person. It's like, what's in it for you? How can I help you be more productive, happier?
Yeah.
Get out, get done by like 5 p.m. even sooner and get out, and it's like, go have fun.
Well, I guess my question is like, when I was a graduate, you'd hear, there'll be like an all hands meeting, or we have like these monthly meetings where they're saying these things, but it doesn't always talk to me. So I'm asking, as an innovation person who's trying to impact maybe 100, 500 people, how do you do this at scale? Is it literally like just repetition of the message? How do you actually do this?
Mostly that, but so one thing that I found is if you start higher up, if you start like at a BU level leader or even VP or like whatever it is, if you get the buy-in there, they usually sell it downward.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk to every person in that organization, but finding the right people that have that influence, the leaders that are actually going to affect the other people and say, paint the vision for them. So you're going to find those, we call them so many different things. We call them innovation captains, but we're going to get to them later, and the drivers. But it's like those are the people that are really going to have influence on others.
Yeah.
The mavens, right? That are going to spread the word.
Yeah. Is there a way, and maybe we'll get into it in a moment, but as a startup as well, that's the person I want on my side. So I think there's more of a question of I'm going into an organization, how do I know that person's the maven and that person, isn't? Like, I don't want to waste my time.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't think you can just find that off the top, immediately as you're talking to people. Starting with the group that's going to be helping you implement as a startup, right? I'm talking from a different perspective. As a startup, you're looking for the innovation leaders, you're looking for VDC people, you're looking for IT, just as a starting point.
Yeah.
Once you sell them on that, they can help you find the right people internally and start a pilot program.
Yes.
And we're moving across the builders, but so from the users, once we get the buy-in, they want to implement it, we understand the problem statement, we found the right solution, then, and only then, we go to the I in builders, which is implementation plan.
Okay.
And the implementation plan, it's you literally have to list out everything in terms of like what are our goals, what are we trying to do, what is our timeline, what's the project that we're working on, who the stakeholders are, roles and responsibilities, and most importantly, success criteria.
Yes.
How do we measure success? Right? Like if we implement this and 6 months later, how do we know if it was successful or not? Right. So you have to establish that upfront in that implementation plan, making sure that all stakeholders, everybody that's involved, sees it, understands it, agrees to it.
Yeah.
We actually tried to put it as like a contract with everybody that scared people off. So we're like, no, just give me the thumbs up that this is what you agreed to this, and then it's all good. So getting from the implementation plan, you go.
Wait, just stop on the I had a question about the implementation plan. Is that driven by the startup or yourselves as so there's going to be innovation, project team, potentially executive sponsor, and startup, right? And in this room.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of, if I'm a startup, how can I streamline this process? So maybe the startup walks in with a template, maybe you guys walk in with a template and come together. Is that the best way? Because talking to a lot of people in the industry, they'll say, like a lot of startups don't give us an implementation plan and we have to develop it, and that's a massive time sink.
Yes. We have our own template, so we established it and we know exactly what we're going to cover. It's going to be different from company to company.
Yeah.
I usually, like when I implement something within Haskell, I don't share the implementation plan
with the startup. Interesting.
Yeah, it's just a different approach because I tell them what my success criteria are, but the implementation plan for me is more internally facing.
So why don't you share that? Like, what's there that you don't want to share?
Because it's been used against me in the past.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the thing. And again, it's mentioned in the book, is one thing you want to be wary of is like when you set success criteria, I'm not saying everybody, some startups will have that in the contract. And it mentions that if we met these, this automatically renews or automatically expands or something like that.
That's really,
I've had to deal with that after the fact. I was blindsided by it. I didn't see it in the contract because who reads the T's and C's, right? Yeah. It's just like, I was just going to sign the thing. But stuff like that, you want to make sure that you're covering all your bases. You don't want any of this to be held against you. But at the same time, you still want to share that with the startup, saying like, here's what matters to us. Yeah. I know you're going to cover a whole lot of different things, and you're going to have, you're going to deliver so many different value props, but here's what matters to us. Mm-hmm. And that's the essence of the implementation plan. But it's mostly like internally facing, so that when we come back and we're going to get to it in the R and reporting, it's like I need to understand how to write it up. Right?
Yeah, and I think there's something important to state that if you put that in the contract, you're probably going to burn the relationship. If it's something like that, and then you're going to tell your peers, right? Everyone's going to hear that these guys kind of blindsided you with that. I know the success criteria are important, but there are other soft factors which we don't capture. And I think having that conversation at the end of the pilot, honestly and openly about that, because 100%. I think additionally to that, even if you have an auto renewal in the contract, that doesn't guarantee enterprise-wide adoption. So a successful pilot doesn't mean that you can cross the chasm into enterprise-wide rollout. So even if you have that in the contract, it doesn't mean adoption. So don't put that in the contract because you're burning the relationship.
Absolutely. And there's a part of the success criteria that we have in the implementation plan. It's two parts. You just reminded me of that. One is quantitative. It's like what metrics that we want to measure. It's like say time savings, cost savings, whatever it is. But then there's a qualitative aspect to it. It's like ease of use, just the perceived notion from our stakeholders saying that, yes, this actually helped me or not. So we have some qualitative measures, Likert scale, 1 through 5. And then the last thing, which is kind of like our NPS scores, like would you recommend this to your next colleague, or would you implement this in your next project?
Have you found any relationship between NPS and adoption? Because I've heard NPS can be a very strong metric for adoption.
It's, it goes, there is not a lot of neutrals. Yeah. There's either like high like promoters or high detractors. You're like 0. It's like, do I have a 0? And like, no, you get 1. Like, I want 0. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
But like, and it all depends on your end, right? Like how many people
Yeah.
took the survey.
Yeah.
And we usually, like when we do a pilot, like our sample size is 5-6 people. So you're not going to get a good NPS score out of that. But we still like to capture it just to kind of continue that conversation. Because I love, and it's also a trick for me because that helps me find other drivers. The people that put 9 and 10 is like, hey, let me talk to you about other stuff.
Yeah. Maybe you can be an innovation champion for me, you know?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So moving on from implementation plan, the L is for learning.
Well, L is for learning, right? So we set up the implementation plan. Everybody's bought in. Everybody's excited. How do we get started? You have onboarding, training, user guides, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that I also talk to startups about is like, make sure your product is easy to use.
Yes.
Right? You cannot overstate that ease of use aspect. Because the more complex it is, the more people are just going to lose, traction with it. And it doesn't have to be like, so ease of use doesn't need, like the whole solution should be simple, right?
Yeah.
It's like it only does one thing. But it's that entryway. And that's what I talk about in the learning phase is that phasing approach of learning. It's like, let me introduce you to this. I'm not going to show you everything under the hood. Let me just show you this one feature. Let's talk about this. Let's make sure you're all comfortable with it. And then you start implementing another thing. And you kind of keep adding to it. And that's what I love about doing it that way is like when you get users in front of like a new tool and you teach them how to do one thing, they're going to start exploring on their own, right? They're going to be like, oh, wait, what does that button do? What does this thing do? And that kind of promotes the next onboarding sessions. It's like, oh, did you experiment with that already? Let me show you how it actually works, right?
Yeah.
And how it ties to what we did before. So learning is extremely important to set that, that pilot project up for success.
And I think there's a really important statement on time to value, right? Like if you do one feature really well, you can show this is the value and they'll start learning. And so my last project was delivering an AI capability uplift program. And what we realized is, there's like 4 different categories in a pyramid and everyone's a different place in the pyramid. Let's focus on the bottom of the pyramid, and then naturally, after about 3 months, we got all this demand for, hey, how do we actually prompt in AI? But before you get to that, we've actually got to teach you, just start using the AI first. Right. And we started to get this really pull demand from the business where a portion of the users become power users and they want more content. And I think that's a great point of, they're not going to use 100% of your solution today, but they're willing to use 20%. Maybe in 3 months they use 40%, then they use 60%. So there needs to be that phased approach of implementation.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what the L is all about.
And I think moving on to D for drive.
So the D is very important. We're talking about the drivers. These are the people, the champions.
Yeah.
That are enthusiastic, that are excited, that are passionate about seeing this through and seeing this problem statement solved. Usually they're the people that are closest to the problem statement. They're the people that are actually doing the grunt work.
Yeah.
And they are extremely hard to find.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge here is like finding your drivers within the company is going to be hard. Because they usually are not even like in a leadership position. They're usually, again, like low in the totem pole, on the grounds, like dealing with the problems. But once you show them, they are going to make sure that it works. Because it helps them, right? And goes back to what's in it for me, right? It's like if it helps them, it helps the project team, it helps everybody. But you have to find those drivers and really nurture them and try to kind of spoil them, so to say. It's like, oh, what do you need? Like let's go, right? You don't have to go through any hoops. We'll jump through the hoops for you, like with IT, with finance, with all of that stuff. I just want you to implement it. I want you to use it. I want you to talk to your peers about it. And that's kind of also part of the onboarding and the learning is like the drivers will really start pushing it to the others and showing them how it's used and how it saved them time and all that stuff.
So where are you engaging with the driver in the process? Is this start as when you're like pulling out the problem statements, or are you engaging with them, a little bit later in the process?
It's way earlier. It's part of that you aspect. So you're still, when you're talking to users, you're still trying to find that driver.
Yeah.
But it's again, I can't state this enough. They're not easy to find. They're not easy to find.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of pay attention to the people that are, either reaching out to startups outside of like the innovation team or the VDC team or IT. And that's something that helped me a lot, is having these connections with a lot of different startups and the salespeople in there and the founders. Because when they get an inbound from somebody that clicked a button on their website from Haskell side, they reach out to me and they say, hey, this person reached out. So now I know I have a driver there, and I go and talk to them and get that rolling, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a really important statement, because there was cases of solutions that I was trying to get some feedback on, and talking to some of the exec sponsors or people in the space, and they're like, talk to the startup, because we have zero idea. We know people in our business are using it, but we don't know where.
Yeah.
So it can be really valuable for, well, one, being at industry events and knowing the solutions.
Yeah.
But you are the point person, and then you can liaise internally of, hey, we've had 10 people reach out for X solution.
Yeah. And one thing that we found also is like a good way to finding drivers is asking people like very simple questions. It's like, hey, have you, like, who do you think is looking at technology? Who's like tech savvy?
Yeah.
And if more than one person points to one, you know that there's something there. You can go talk to that guy or girl.
Yeah, and that's real. Because, it can really make a difference. I remember I got very lucky with a role because someone just was like, oh, there's a tech role. Maybe you might be interested. So, it really does make a difference. And then you learn, oh, these are the people I can work with.
Yeah.
Not I can work with, but they're they're a little bit more, And going to E, which is for evaluation.
Evaluation. This is, it's the way that I set it up here, it shows it that it's like at the end of the pilot project. But I can't stress enough that this is a continuous effort throughout the pilot. You cannot wait until the end of the pilot to say, how did that work?
Yes.
Because people have, every company has attrition. People leave, people move to different jobs, people forget. So a lot of the feedback that I got later on, and again, most of this is like my lessons learned, is after like a 6-month pilot, I go back and talk to people and they're like, oh, yeah. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, why? It just didn't work. That's all I remember. So getting those details, you have to be like on that regular check-ins with them and getting that information, documenting it all. Documentation is key. That's what I keep telling my team. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. Right?
So how are you doing this documentation? Is it literally like you're jumping on a call with a potential pilot end user and then you're writing it up and capturing it somewhere? There's no way. Yeah,
that's practically it.
And then from a customer, like a startup perspective, can they augment your capability in any way by streamlining this process? Like how can they put their
They can. So a lot of the different startups have dedicated implementation teams and customer success teams that are going to have that regular cadence check-ins. What we always have to be part of that, right? I tell them to not just have those calls with the team without involving us as well, because we need to hear that feedback from the team. Because I don't know what they're going to come back to me after saying that's what they said. I have to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to say. So we're constantly kind of like piggybacking on that, like those cadences with implementation teams or customer success, and getting that feedback collectively. But towards the end of the pilot is when you want to send that overall survey. It's like, how did this work? Did it actually provide the value? That's the Likert scale. Was it easy to use? What other features did you want, but it didn't exist? Things like that you get from the users. You get a lot of different feedback. You compile that, and you go to the next phase, which is R. R is kind of for reporting. Documentation is key, right? So if you put it in a report, then we can say, this happened. We did a pilot project. Here's how it went. Here's what everybody thought about it. And it's just a compilation of everything that happened from the beginning.
Yeah.
From the benchmarking phase, to talking to the users, from finding the startup company, implementation plan, all of it. You're just capturing it all, putting it all in one document, and sharing it internally. And the way that we do that is because we are kind of like outside of operations, so we're just doing innovation. And then when we find a technology that works, or even like a failed pilot, we still report on it. But we have a recommendation section at the end that says, DisruptTech recommends scaling, or DisruptTech doesn't recommend scaling.
How do you share this with the business? Do you have like an internal website? Like, just say I'm an engineer at Haskell,
Yeah.
right? I'm interested in technology. I want to know what we're piloting, what we have piloted, what works, what doesn't work. Maybe there's an off-the-shelf solution that you've already done. How do I access this information?
I hate to say it, but SharePoint page.
Gotta love SharePoint, you know? Yeah.
Gotta love SharePoint. I mean, it works. It has all the information there. We're looking at other tools that can help us really showcase the different things that we've done and make it easy for people to use. We've actually implemented or created our own kind of like AI agent that you can talk to and ask it questions, and it will recommend solutions based on our pipeline.
Yeah.
It's like, here, your innovation team piloted this successfully, implement in your project.
What's the engagement on that tool? That's a really interesting,
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because the way that we built it, we worked with a guy called Kenny up in Canada. He's awesome. And I have access to the back end that sees
the prompts.
The prompts, yes. So here's the funny part is like people are going and asking this AI bot questions that I have the answers to.
Yeah.
But they don't want to talk to me, right?
Because they don't know. Yeah.
It's easier for them to talk to an AI agent rather than talk to us.
Of course.
And I try not to make it so obvious that I've seen your prompt. I've seen the prompts, and not the AI.
You should get the AI to prompt them back. Be like, why didn't you ask Hamzah? And see what they respond.
Well, the AI doesn't usually always give them the right answer either.
Yeah.
Because it tries to understand what they're trying to say and says, well, maybe these tools would work for you. But that's when I kind of try to reach out to that person and say, hey, are you looking for something? But I try not to show that I read the prompt. Or we had a guy that had like a whole freaking 45-minute chat with this bot. He went through the rabbit hole to the other side, but we made it happen.
That's quite funny. That's quite funny. And it is funny because they definitely know that you're at it, but it's like, no one's going to say this.
I'm not trying to say it, but at the same time, I'm like, I can provide you, better
Did you ever put
responses.
a human in the loop of just like, hey, you're chatting so long, here's the email addresses of...
I think that would be a better idea. Or ping Hamzah or Leo.
Here's a Teams
else.
message, just direct them to you.
I think that would be the next phase.
And then, we're at the final step of the Builders framework, which is the optional S here, but important, very important.
That's why it's in parentheses, it's optional, because not all pilots go to scaling. But scaling it could be its own book.
Yes.
Because there's a lot that goes into scaling, which, from an operations perspective, is like, how do you change management, ADCAR, right? Awareness, desire, and all that knowledge. How do you put it in front of employees? How do you set up on an organization enterprise level? SSOs, integrations, security, IT security stuff. And then how do you operationalize it? How do you get the user guide, the training, spreading it out and getting that collective feedback and continuing to improve it. So there's a lot that goes into scaling, and it's not...
The documentation continues, is what I'm hearing.
The documentation continues, always.
Yeah. And then, is that a challenge for your team between the desire for new solutions, but then the heavy lifting, or not even the heavy lifting, but the continued lifting that the scaling of solutions? How have you structured your team? Because I know for us we had... Well, the way we tried it was, piloting team and scaling team, different teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do the same thing. The scaling team is the operations team.
Yeah.
And the different BUs, different departments, right? So there's no one large, giant operational scaling team. But we work with them. So we give them the report and we say, this worked,
Why? Yeah.
I'll show them all the data, right?
Yeah.
Of why it worked and how it worked. And we help them with the negotiation aspect with the startup or with the technology company, that you're like, here's what it would look like to scale it, here's the effort, here's all of that stuff. But we try to be as hands-off as possible, because I'm trying to hand it off and go run 7 other pilots at the same time.
Yeah.
But we're with them through the trenches, through it all, and kind of establishing that relationship and making sure that everything is running smoothly. And then I know it's a successful scale when they remove me from having admin rights on the platform. Great. I don't need to see it anymore.
Yeah, gotcha. Is there anything in common that you found with successful scales, or is it unique? Yeah.
It's different from platform to platform because they solve different things. But word of mouth and like just that grassroots adoption is like fire.
Yes.
Like something as simple as like pipe closeout was one of our most successful pilots way back when, like 2018. And how it spread is like we started with like 2 APMs, assistant project managers, and because they have lunch with each other about different projects and stuff, and people just started talking about how, you're still working on a large Excel sheet. Look what I'm doing over here. And it just like overnight, it just like spread like wildfire, and everybody wanted access to it, and then it just kind of like scaled very quickly.
And was that just really, your solution just met a critical hair on fire problem? It wasn't, they did really good implementation, they did great L&D, it was just...
No, they did all of that too, but it was that, like, the problem was there, and the people that are feeling the pain saw that there was a better way, and they immediately jumped.
And it clicked in their heads immediately. Yeah.
Other implementations, like another story that I have is Join. Join was a failed pilot to begin with.
Yeah.
Because, again, like, we're talking to like project developers and business development people. They're like, why do I need to show everything to the owner? I'm opening the kimono over here. Anyway, so there was a lot of that pushback. It's like, I don't need this, right? There's no problem.
Yeah.
Right? I can share whatever Excel file that I have with the owner. Until we got another pilot, and that's what I kept saying, is like, a failed pilot doesn't mean it's off forever. It means maybe find a different project or different people, different bot and users. We got it on another project, and the owner, which is like, from day one, he saw the platform, and they said, don't ever introduce me anything again without this platform. Like, don't show me any negotiations or estimates or stuff like that.
We want
other than this.
Yeah.
And that just continued to scale that way because now the owners are seeing that and getting excited about it. And now the project developers are like, oh, you like that? Let me show you more.
Yeah. And I think that's a good statement of Join and a comment on construction virality. If you can really get that circle of, hey, owner loves it, owner forces all projects, GCs are now using it, GC introduces it to new owner, and you start getting this really virtuous cycle going.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's one, thank you for going through your Builders framework. I saw the big sigh, it was a lot, but I wanted to end this conversation with what's next for Hamzah. Where do you want to go with either this book or reaching more people or even next in your career, right? Like, you've written a book, you're doing innovation, like, what's next?
I'm always, part of the mission that we have in DisrupTech is our 3 I's. I'm sure we've talked about it several times, just like invest, invent, and innovate. So we've been doing a lot of investments, talking to the great people at Bhragan Mortar and others, and then we've done a lot of innovation, which is kind of like pairing that problem statement with the technology solution or finding different ideas. But we haven't really done a lot of work in the invent. I mean, we do have a couple of patents, we have a couple of products that we're bringing to market, but that's really kind of what I'm trying to focus on moving forward, is inventing new things that don't exist.
So I'm hearing Hamzah, startup founder.
Still with Haskell.
Yeah. We can cut that out, No, but that's really interesting, and I think it's very challenging, obviously, as a corporate to build new things for a variety of reasons, from stakeholder engagement, the amount of people, justification for budgets, but if you can, and a lot of spin-outs, there's a really good opportunity to tie corporate experience, understanding problem statements, and generalize and provide value to the industry at scale.
But that's why I'm talking about invent is The Innovator's Dilemma. Clayton Christensen, great book, talks about the 2 different innovation types within an organization, right? Sustaining innovation, which is all of the stuff that we've been talking about throughout this book, right? This is all sustaining innovation. It's like, I'm doing something, I need to do it better.
Yeah.
How can I make it better?
Yeah.
But then there's disruptive innovation, which is changing the paradigm of like, I'm doing something, now I'm doing it completely differently, right? And that's the part that I'm really trying to focus on kind of like in this upcoming chapter of my life.
Yeah.
Just like what paradigm shifting ideas are there that we can try to incubate within Haskell?
And how, if you don't mind me asking, how do you go about that process? Because it's hard, there's a challenge from investment ROI, and then it's like, are we building something for Haskell only because our processes are unique versus for the industry? Because if it's for the industry, ROI is potentially there.
Yeah.
And I think, who is it? Qt with Innate is a good example of for the industry.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, building something for Haskell can be really valuable, but the ROI calculation is different.
Yeah, but that's like an NA and other stuff. They're still sustaining.
Yes.
In my opinion, right?
Okay.
Because we're still doing the same thing. We're just doing it in a better way. But what I'm talking about is like different business models, different ways of capturing things or enhancing. So one of the things that I'm actually here in San Francisco to talk about it around future tech, which is WISE, which is like an internal idea that we came up with, that we are in R&D phase right now, and here's where I'm talking about it. It's progress tracking on a job site using Wi-Fi routers.
Interesting.
So you benchmark the channel state index between two Wi-Fi routers, and you teach the AIs like a duct would intercept that channel state index in this way, a pipe would do it this way, and a conduit would do it that way. That way you have this mesh network around the job site of Wi-Fi nodes, and you get instant progress track.
That's really interesting. Because you're kind of making this digital model of how you're using like the airwaves, so to speak, to understand where things are.
Going back to Bat Vision.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But I just wanted to touch on that different business model point, because something that frustrated me on the consulting side is the billable model.
Yeah.
It feels like an inherent disincentive to actually innovate.
100%.
And I think as an industry, to really improve the adoption of new solutions, we need to think about contractual structures that support innovation. And I think there's also another statement of is that vertical integration, how do we incorporate software development teams inside of companies? So I don't know if there's any riff or any ideas that you have on that.
We have the same issue because we're a design build company.
Yeah.
And most of our design projects are based on design hours.
Yeah.
But what happens when you have a generative design tool that can help you finish it in 2 hours rather than 200?
Yeah.
Are you still going to build for 200 hours, or are you going to change your business model?
And it's a real challenge, because I've seen contracts that will pay you for 100 hours. If it goes over 100 hours, you lose. And if it goes under 100 hours, well, we take the profit.
Yeah.
And it just screws you as a bill model. So it's like, I haven't, we never did that. But like, you can read the contract and it's like, I have an incentive to hit 100 hours exactly on the dot.
Yes.
So why would I use a generative design solution?
Exactly.
And that's, I think, one of the hardest challenges, and why we've seen so many solutions on the construction side rather than the design side. Yeah.
But like the paradigm is shifting, and it's shifting quickly.
Yeah.
With the owners, because the owners can dictate anything, right? And they're only getting more and more tech savvy. They're only getting better and better at running these projects and understanding how to do it better. So the more they start, implementing tools on their own.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I mean, is there a question of we get a V2 of this book that's written to the owner that's like, hey, these are the tech that you should be forcing the industry to use. I mean, it makes our jobs harder, but at the same time, it's good. Yeah.
No, Faith, like the sequel to this book it's a different route.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a good place to end it, because we got a bit of curiosity. We know something's coming. But I wanted to say thank you so much for coming in today and running us through your framework. And if you haven't bought the book or read the book, please do so.